two, one, two, three.
Hello and welcome to Ithaca DSA Presents. I'm Theresa Alt. I'm here today with Roxy Johnston, Watershed Coordinator for the City of Ithaca. We're going to be talking about the water that we drink, not just here in the City of Ithaca, but also around Tompkins County. Roxy Johnston, you may want to say a little more about what your job is and what you do.
So I am the watershed coordinator for the City of Ithaca, and in that role, I work outside of the City of Ithaca mostly to develop partnerships and relationships with other utilities and other municipalities, and also to provide a voice for the City of Ithaca with proposed regulations at the state or federal level, um, and to also give input on management planning. Um, my other hat is as the lab director for the City of Ithaca's drinking water plant, thus my special focus on the City of Ithaca's drinking water. Um, in that role, I mostly oversee the regulatory testing and monitoring that's required to continuously ensure that the drinking water is safe, provide support in the lab for the process control testing that the operators do around the clock to make sure that everything is working as intended. Also organize the outreach efforts and help with tours.
Sounds good. I know that the city's water plant is you go east or southeast on State Street, Route 79, MLK Junior Street, which whatever you call it. And when you come quite close to the city line, you turn right on Water Street,
Mhm.
appropriately named,
Mhm.
and that leads you right to the plant.
It does
And
indeed.
I am actually sitting about half a mile downhill from there. This is where I live.
You should have terrific water pressure.
We have very old small pipes in our house.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, okay. Well then, yep. And we have moderately high hardness in the water due to the calcareous nature of the sediments in the area. So the pipes can actually build up a scale. So we use 6 Mile Creek as the source for our drinking water. And our intake is about 2 miles outside of town. Um, and we have a reservoir there where we collect the water from the stream.
Oh, yes, and at least I remember in decades past, young people used to go and swim there, and that was considered a problem.
Yeah, there's still some activity. It's mostly at the lower reservoir, which was built and abandoned pretty quickly in the early 1900s. There is some still issue with swimming there. It's not safe. People should avoid doing that.
You were saying I should have good water pressure, and that is because it is delivered entirely by gravity, I believe.
So 70% of our distribution system is delivered by gravity because most of our system is downhill from the drinking water plant. Um, the other 30% is pumped, so up on East Hill and South Hill, and those are pumping zones. We have a balancing tank on West Hill that's at the same elevation as our clear well. So that is still on our gravity feed, but we do have a booster station for chlorine there. So as the water moves farther away from your system, you can lose some of that protection in your system.
But I understand that not everybody who lives within the city of Ithaca gets water from 6 Mile Creek?
Almost everybody does. At the borders, there can be a little bit of fuzziness as you head out towards the hospital. There'll be a few folks that may live in the city of Ithaca and get their water from what is known as Bolton Point. It's the Southern Cayuga Lake Intermunicipal Water Commission, I believe. Um, so they use Cayuga Lake, and that serves the town of Ithaca, Lansing town and village, village of Dryden, I believe, and Cayuga Heights. Um, and then in the Fall Forest Home area and College Town, there'll be some folks who are getting water from us and some from Cornell University, um, who uses Fall Creek as their source water.
Uh-huh. That Cornell system does supply a few others.
The whole campus,
The whole
yeah,
campus
the whole
and
campus, yeah.
a
And
few nearby areas.
College Town, most of Forest Home, but as you get at the edges, a
Well,
little
you say
confusing.
Forest Home, but probably also what's called Cornell Heights, I'm guessing.
Probably. I don't want to
Okay.
commit. It's not my
Okay.
water system. Probably you are correct. That could also be Bolton Point. I don't know. That would be the dividing line, I think,
Okay.
between their
Okay.
systems.
So we have talked quite seriously about two systems that get their water out of creeks
Hmm.
at a relatively high altitude for this area. You alluded also to Bolton Point,
Hmm.
and that's where the town gets its water. And what's different there?
So the water will have slightly different characteristics because it's not as it's more influenced by rainwater runoff than the groundwater inputs. So it'll be a little softer. It will taste a little less like the calcareous rocks. So you'll have a taste difference. The other difference, there's an operational difference in the sense that like most of our system is downhill, so gravity fed, and our source is uphill, so gravity into the plant. Whereas Bolton Point sits up above the lake, but not terribly high. And a lot of their system is at a similar elevation or higher and farther out. So they have to pump water to their facility and pump it out. Now, operationally, they have a benefit in the sense that when you have a big storm event, if you've ever noticed the south end of the lake as the rain is coming down or the day or so after, you'll see a lot of chocolate looking water coming out of Cayuga Inlet and Fall Creek, and 6 Mile Creek drops into the Cayuga Inlet just upstream of where it goes into the lake a little bit. That sediment, coming down through the streams, a lot of that will settle out and never make it to the intake for Bolton Point. So the water clarity is a lot higher coming into their treatment facility, whereas both Cornell and the city have to address removing the sediment. So there are differences. Bolton Point will probably never have to worry about running out of water during a drought. So there's a benefit. We have a reservoir, but it does need dredged, so it is shallower than designed to be. So we have some capacity for drought, but we have a very small watershed. Cornell does not have a reservoir, so they don't have a good backup for drought, but they do have a larger watershed. So it might be a little more resilient during low rain periods. So there are just a lot of trade-offs. We are all connected within our distribution system, so we can wholly or partly provide water to each other should someone have a temporary issue.
On a recent program, I interviewed Stephanie Redmond
Oh, okay.
from the organization Clean,
Hmm.
who was talking about a not terribly likely, but also you might say not unprecedented danger that the roof of the Cargill salt mine could collapse, as
Hmm.
other salt mines have done in New
Hmm.
York State and elsewhere. And in that case, suddenly you would have a lake of salt water.
Yet, yes, you would definitely have some level of impact from the brine mixing with the lake water. Um, so I have to put on yet another hat to address that. So as a watershed coordinator, I mentioned that I work on watershed issues larger than the city of Ithaca a lot. And one of the big ones is I chair the organization called the Cayuga Lake Watershed Intermunicipal Organization. So it represents the municipalities within our watershed. Um, that organization has provided comment letters a couple times about the Cargill salt mine. Um, one of the concerns is the impacts that could happen to drinking water for Bolton Point's intake, for folks that have beach wells, although for the Department of Health, I'll be clear and say those are not approved public drinking water sources, or even private drinking water sources, but people have them, and that's recognized. But also for impacts that could happen, just for the economic impacts for municipalities if tourism was impacted per se, fishing. Um, the main concern is that there has never been an environmental impact statement, which would um, make publicly available the research or science that has gone into identifying the risks and how those risks would be mitigated. Um, so we, as all the municipalities, including the city of Ithaca, have asked that DEC require that environmental impact statement.
And to continue our survey, because this radio station and also the cable television extends far beyond the city of Ithaca and the town of Ithaca, I'd like to ask about other towns in Tompkins County, and I like to think of them in a kind of counterclockwise order. So, starting with Ulysses on the west side of the lake and north of the city.
I'm gonna put a caveat up front. They're not my water system, so don't hold me to
Yeah.
details. But generally speaking, and what I believe I'm up to date on, Ulysses is getting their water from Bolton Point now for the last several years. Um, and so they're a customer for Bolton Point, so they're using the lake. Whereas the village of Trumansburg may be a mix, I'm not sure, but some portion of the drinking water comes from Trumansburg Creek. And I don't know if they have a groundwater well to supplement that, but they might. Actually, I believe that they have oh boy, this gets confusing, a groundwater under the direct influence of surface water well. So it's a well, but it's close enough to either the stream or the lake that it could be influenced by surface water. That just means that they have to do more monitoring that's related to surface water. I'll stop. I could go on and on
Okay,
and on.
okay. So that was Trumansburg in Ulysses.
Yes.
Now there is another, it's not a town, it's not a village, it's just a hamlet, I guess, what's called, and s- cluster of houses that doesn't really have any special government. Um, Jacksonville. And I know there was a scandal there, oh, maybe a couple of decades ago,
Mhm.
around a leaking gas filling station tank that was polluting people's wells.
So that was, if I remember right, I think the initials are MTBE, methyl tertiary-butyl ethylene, something like that. That was an additive to gas. I actually forget what benefit it provided. Um, and the studies on its safety had overlooked um, how it might move through groundwater. Um, they didn't expect that to be happening, but it did. Yeah, so it showed up in the there's no public water system there. It's all private wells. But yeah, it polluted those wells. And so for I think quite a while they had to get bottled water and are probably now served by the Bolton Point water because the
I
line goes
think
through there.
so.
Yeah,
They have a water, what's called a water district.
that makes
There are
sense.
a
Yeah,
lot of those districts. I mean, there are water districts and fire districts, things where otherwise non-incorporated places are incorporated for a specific purpose.
right, right.
So let's move on. As I said, clockwise.
Mhm.
Enfield.
I don't believe they have any public water supplies there. They might have community water supplies, and that could be like a campground, um, mobile home park sort of thing. But there's nothing like what you'd think of for Bolton Point or the City of
Mhm.
Ithaca. So those would be private groundwater sources.
Groundwater, that is to say,
Yeah,
wells.
wells. Yes,
Yeah.
that is
Uh,
exactly.
and Newfield.
So they use groundwater. They do have a small municipal drinking water system, and that's where my specific knowledge ends on Newfield.
Okay. Danby.
Same story. A small
Okay.
groundwater municipal system.
Caroline.
Nothing municipal. Private wells. Their water is groundwater, but a lot of the folks are it's artesian wells, so they're under pressure. Um, so that's interesting. They have a lot of interesting history with their water. They used to stain glass with it a long time ago and sell that sort of an orangey iridescent stain that would come on it. I think it's iron. That'd be a good topic for another day when you talk to someone in the town of Caroline. Um, but
So
yeah,
that would be local history, I guess.
yes, local history. Yeah.
Okay, next town going now north again on the east side of things, Dryden.
So Dryden, the village and the town. I don't know where the district lines are and how they differ. I know there's a groundwater source from wells. I believe they use Dryden Lake a little bit, and Bolton Point also serves part of the village, I think, or town. But all three of those sources, I think, are serving within that Dryden Town Village area.
And of course, Dryden also has the village of Freeville.
So that would probably be served by whatever is under the town of Dryden. So Wells and maybe Dryden Lake. The health department will have all these specifics. They oversee all these systems. I
I see.
really just work at the
That's
City of
okay.
Ithaca. But I do interact a lot with the other two surface water plants because we have the same kind of issues. And we're all very close to each other. Um, but carry
Okay.
on, carry on.
Okay. Well, going right to the northern edge of the county on the eastern side of the lake, Lansing.
Yeah, so village and town are Bolton Point for the municipal water that they have. So it'd be Cayuga Lake. So that's not to say um, that the, there are still people within all of those municipalities, even the ones that have some municipal water service, that are not served by that system. So they will all be on private wells.
They're very rural people.
Yes,
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 yes.
yeah,
Like North Lansing.
yes, like North Lansing.
Okay. And finally, the big interesting question, what about Groton? I learned
So
long ago that it is in a different watershed.
it's in two watersheds, just like the town of Caroline is. It part of Groton is in the Cayuga Lake watershed, um, and part of it is in the Owasco Lake watershed. Um, and this is probably the town I know the least about in Tompkins County. It's the farthest flung from me, I guess. They do have a public drinking water system. I believe it's groundwater. I don't know which watershed it's sitting in, but I believe it's Tompkins County.
Well, certainly the town of Groton, I mean, yeah, the whole town of Groton is in Tompkins County.
So there was a historical issue with the wastewater plant discharge in relation to Owasco Lake water quality. So again, I don't know where that utility sits and its discharge with relationship to the town itself, which has all been, it's all updated and improved and not an issue. So I probably shouldn't have referenced that. But I don't know where the utilities sit for their intakes and discharges.
Yeah, well, let's see. I think I actually did a little of my own research on this. Well, let me see what I have. The village of Groton has a municipal water system,
Hmm.
which has two sources of water, something called Morton Works Infiltration Gallery, and the Conger Boulevard well field. And the Morton Works seems to be surface water that flows by gravity to a tank where it is filtered to meet federal guidelines and disinfected and distributed to the village. And the Conger Boulevard well field is also, you know, treated and pumped to a system. So, as with so many things, Groton is a little different from the rest of us. I mean, they are also famous for having, the village is famous for having municipal electricity.
Oh, yeah, I do remember that. Yeah. Hmm.
And the other interesting tidbit that I picked up is that the town of Groton, which has a website that says absolutely nothing about water, so I assume they just leave it to people's wells if they aren't in the village, in or near the village. The town was established in 1817, a few years before the town of Ithaca was established.
Mm. Yep. So it
So,
predates it. That's
yeah, yeah,
yeah. Every public water system is going to have something slightly different for how they collect and treat their water. But in the big picture, in the grand scheme of things, we all do it the same. Um, the water is filtered to remove sediment, bacteria, other particulate, other contaminant particles. Um, and then it goes through a disinfection process, a time to sit with the chlorine to remove or inactivate anything smaller. And then there's a residual chlorine required in the distribution system in case there's a main break or some kind of low pressure incident where a contaminant could get into the lines. Then you would still have this chlorine, this low residual chlorine, to inactivate that and keep the water safe. And there's just a whole suite of testing that goes on at every utility every day along every step of the process to make sure all the parameters are being met. And then once it's out into their system, everyone is routinely and regularly sampling that system for another set of parameters to make sure that like your residual's high enough, there aren't particles in the water, and then the other contaminants are at safe levels or not detected. So that process is goes on all the time from all of the systems.
good. So those are the systems. And then maybe for a minute or so, we can say a little more about the people in the very rural areas who rely on wells. And is that the system everywhere, or are there people who get their water from streams?
Not officially approved drinking water sources according to the health departments because a groundwater well that's not being influenced by any surface water, so not a beach well, something that is disconnected and really only drawing from the groundwater, has the benefit of long-term filtration through the Earth's surface. And and it should not also have like bacterial or other contaminants because again, it's disconnected um, from good growing conditions. It's been filtering down into the rocks for hundreds or thousands of years. So that water is pretty safe. The only things you might have to worry about is like say if you're out west, arsenic is a common concern because it's part of the geology. It's natural in the soil. There are a few places around here where arsenic levels are a little higher, or sulfur, because it's again part of the geology. Your well water might have a high sulfur content and odor and taste that's unpalatable, or iron. Um, but you're not going to be susceptible to runoff from, a factory where something escapes, or road runoff, from like leaking oils and gases, or
Salt.
salts, right? Although some groundwater is saline, not a lot around here, but if it is, then that is an issue. But you're not going to be susceptible to um, snow, road maintenance salt runoff.
Okay. Okay. Well, thank you, Roxy Johnson. It's
You're
been
welcome.
interesting hearing about where we get our water.
Thank you again. It's great to
Yeah.
talk to you.
This has been Ithaca DSA Presents. I'm Theresa Alt. Thanks for watching.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3.